There is a kind of defeat that leaves no ruins. The United States fields the most formidable armed forces ever assembled. Its currency circulates globally, and its capital is secure. By every physical measure, it is the most powerful state in history. Yet it operates under an absolute, invisible administrative subservience. In registries on a 9-square-mile island, or in technical committee meetings in the south of France, decisions are made that dictate what the American state can borrow, what its manufacturers must build, and what its consumers may lawfully purchase. None of these decisions require American consent. None can be reversed by any physical weapon in the American arsenal. Empire is not reducible to redcoats and governors holding territory. Sovereignty is the retained capacity of one political center to determine the conditions under which another operates. The load of sovereignty is invisible. When a state surrenders its administrative centers, its legal bonds, and its technical certification scopes, it surrenders its independence. This is how a political community is defeated from within, entirely lawfully, without a single shot fired. Every state performs adjudication functions. These are constitutive powers that determine whether a thing exists at all in the eyes of the law, whether a security is legally owned, or whether a device may be legally sold. Historically, adjudication required physical presence, a customs officer at a border, or a registrar in a physical courthouse. That geographic coupling has dissolved. Adjudication has migrated into digital substrates, registries, and technical baselines that can be domiciled anywhere. To understand the exact dimensions of this vulnerability, we have to examine two specific columns of the American state: the money, determining U.S. debt, and the machine, determining U.S. technology certification. What you will see is not a conspiracy. It is an architecture that accreted over decades through thousands of individual choices made for market efficiency, liberalization, and administrative convenience. This chart reconstructs the Treasury's own December 2025 Major Foreign Holders table. It tells the standard story of American sovereign debt. Japan appears first at $1.18 trillion. The United Kingdom is second, and mainland China is third. But we need to perform an arithmetic operation the table's own structure discourages. If you isolate the United Kingdom, the Cayman Islands, and Bermuda, 3 jurisdictions whose ultimate constitutional authority is identical, answering to the exact same final court of appeal in London, and combine them, that combined British constitutional space holds $1.386 trillion. The largest concentration of foreign-held United States sovereign debt sits inside British jurisdiction. The government's table used to present the data this way. But 2 statistical categories tracking these exact Caribbean and UK offshore banking centers were quietly discontinued and retired into an opaque residual category after February 2016. A state that cannot see a pattern in its own data will not act on it. The formatting and statistical apparatus of the Treasury actively obscures this concentration from its own policymakers. The official table is also missing a massive piece of the picture. In October 2025, Federal Reserve Board staff published a finding that the official Treasury system undercounts Cayman-domiciled hedge fund holdings by roughly $1.4 trillion. Between 2022 and 2024, foreign central banks, the entities that dominate public anxiety about American debt, absorbed $32 billion of new U.S. issuance. Cayman hedge funds absorbed $1.225 trillion. The marginal buyer of the United States government is a British overseas territory of 90,000 residents. These Cayman funds are overwhelmingly managed by American capital out of Greenwich, Manhattan, and Chicago. American capital finances the American state through a legal jurisdiction where the supervisory authority is foreign and where beneficial ownership cannot be compelled by American process. This flowchart maps the mechanics of the Treasury basis trade driving that volume. Funds buy the cash Treasury, sell the corresponding future, and finance the bond overnight. The profitability requires staggering leverage. Federal Reserve researchers estimate effective leverage in this repo borrowing can reach 56 times, heavily reliant on zero or negative haircuts. The rapid unwinding of these exact levered positions, at roughly half their present scale, directly contributed to the massive dysfunction of the Treasury market in March 2020. Despite formal constitutional supremacy, London cannot govern this space. The territories successfully resisted Westminster's mandate for public beneficial ownership registers. This creates an unobservable jurisdictional void. The United States government relies on a hyper-leveraged marginal buyer that neither London nor Washington can supervise, measure, or safely wind down. The second column is the gate through which every electronic device enters American commercial life.
The FCC, OSHA, and retailers require that equipment receive a legal authorization to market before it can be plugged in at a hospital or mounted in a military installation. It is commonly assumed that this certification verifies the deep structural security of the hardware, ensuring the absence of hidden surveillance capabilities. It does not. A telecommunications certification body tests for declared spectrum use, radio frequency emissions, and electrical hazards. They have no protocol to test for interception capabilities. The examination is deliberately bounded. Because certifiers only evaluate declared parameters, everything strategically significant operates beneath the declaration threshold. Autonomous subsystems like Intel's Converged Security and Management Engine or AMD's Platform Security Processor are present across essentially the entire installed computing base. They run independent processors with their own memory and cryptographic engines, maintain an independent network stack that bypasses the operating system's firewall, and have full access to system memory without the main core's knowing. The United States outsourced the market access adjudication for these devices entirely to private conformity assessment bodies. The largest operator holding this delegated federal regulatory power is London-based Intertek, which controls over 1,000 laboratories globally. There is no unlisted path to the American market. A manufacturer that declines certification has no route to the shelf. The United States legally mandates a security check that deliberately ignores and obscures the most consequential capabilities of the hardware. This map illustrates the Federal Communications Commission's own logic from its May 2025 Bad Labs order. The Commission formally found that conformity assessment is a national security function, severing recognition for laboratories tied to Chinese state-owned enterprises. The Commission's reasoning was specific. They concluded that laboratories obtain unrestricted access to device specifications, software code, and circuit designs during the ordinary course of certification. That access constitutes an intelligent surface, independent of any physical tampering. Shortly after this order, Intertek's board accepted a buyout from a Luxembourg fund structure with Gulf sovereign wealth in the syndicate. An entity holding delegated United States federal regulatory power, including accreditation for NSA and NIST evaluation programs, was priced in a private equity auction and taken private. America wrote a strict national security test for certification risks, explicitly tying laboratory jurisdiction to data security. It applied that rule to one strategic adversary and then completely ignored the transfer of the largest non-American holder of its own delegated authority to foreign funds. The standard defense of these sub-threshold hardware capabilities is that they are legitimate tools. Enterprise IT departments require remote management subsystems to administer large fleets of machines. Building surveillance equipment must be certified so infrastructure can be secured. As this diagram shows, the physical hardware is a relevant memory and bypasses firewalls is a fleet management tool when your IT department holds the authority. It is a unilateral collection surface when a foreign intelligence service holds the legal process over it. The hardware is identical. The legal relationship dictates the threat. Because this capability is pre-positioned by design across the entire American computing base, activating it requires no factory compromise. No shipments need to be intercepted. The capability exists at zero marginal cost. Under conditions of geopolitical competition, unexamined technical architectures transform into pre-installed, deniable intelligence surfaces. And because the devices pass the required technical scopes, this transformation occurs entirely lawfully. The positions that were vacated can be reoccupied, and the immediate administrative solutions cost nothing. The Treasury can republish its discontinued aggregates, rendering the offshore debt concentration visible again. The FCC can apply its Bad Labs principle jurisdiction neutrally, holding all foreign certification bodies to the security standard it already authored. The United States must also author its own conformity grammar for arriving technologies like artificial intelligence. A civilization that exports its technology stack but imports the technical standards by which that stack is judged has lost the adjudication layer. No garrison ever had to be left behind. The independence declared in 1776 was never finished, because finishing it is not a matter of removing anyone from the ground. It requires taking back the ledgers, the registries, the technical scopes, and the exclusive right to adjudicate what is real.